Hi there. I'm doing a video because, well, this is just a better way for me to express myself. I do a lot better at talking than I do at writing. And so I thought that this would be a good way to reflect on the semester, to try to go over how I think I've done this semester as well as how I've grown, how I've changed, and what have I learned. And kind of fits into with what we've learned, right? That you want to um, do what you can to fit the student best. And so I thought that, I would do a video instead of writing a long, rambling essay. So first off, I'm looking at, who am I now? Where am I now? And where was I? Who was I at the start of the year, all the way back in September? And feels like that was the semester has flown by. It feels like it was just yesterday that I was starting school, and you know, at the start of the year, it was my first time being in a college classroom in over almost 8 years um, since I had been in a college classroom, and it was really scary coming into the school. It felt like I was almost like 14 again, basically, almost like I was walking through high school. And main reason for that was because, like I said, I dropped out of school 8 years ago, and so coming back into school, I was constantly checking my schedule, checking the classroom number to make sure that um, I was where I needed to be because I was just so fearful of messing up, of being in the wrong place, of getting in the way, and I'm also thinking too of how would I answer the question, how do people learn in September? And I think back in September, if you had asked me maybe first day, second week, whatever of the semester, how do people learn? I would say people learn differently, right? Just kind of give you this really surface level answer that eh, people learn differently, right? That's that, you know, and say, well, what can you do to teach people differently? Like, well, you just do it, right? You just kind of know, and which is a terrible answer. It's an awful answer, and um, and now I think of at the very least we've read so much that I have more knowledge to pull from. How do people learn? I would still say that people learn differently. I would still say that um, there is no one perfect way to efficiently teach a classroom of students. Um, and one of the quotes that I did really like came from one of the cognitivists readings that we did a couple of months ago, where the quote, it comes from Ormrod on page 165, where it says, although learners are in the driver's seat in the learning process, teachers can provide a roadmap and offer suggestions about how to move the horse and wagon forward. And that really captures what I want to say about how do people learn, because and what I want to do as a teacher as well, because um, not every student is going to learn the same way, and what I want to do as a teacher is just kind of guide them through their learning. Let them take ownership over the learning. Let them figure out how they need to learn, and even to a certain extent too, I can help them figure out how they need to learn, but at the same time I want them to have more ownership, more power over their learning, more responsibility in the classroom. Because if you give students more responsibility, uh, they like that. They like. I know that when I get more responsibility, I kind of feel a little bit more important. And so when you can give some of the students, if you can change that power dynamic in the classroom, that can really change the effect that you're having on your students. Because traditionally, right? the teacher is up here and the students are down here, and that's how it's always been. And there's no reason to change it because it's been totally effective, and there's nothing wrong with the education system. And yeah, totally. Um, but certainly, what we've been learning is that we can be better. We can do better, and not only we can do better, we should do better because the students, the children of today need that. They deserve that. And I'm really looking forward to becoming a teacher and being able to shape the classroom and design a lesson and a unit and a year in a way that gives students more power in the classroom, that gives them that gives them a voice, um, and lets them follow the path that I've laid out. And even if they go off the path or decide to walk around a tree a different way, or maybe go play in the stream for a little bit and then come back on the path, that'll be okay because as long as I've designed it correctly, they'll still be learning at every single step. Um, so that'll still, obviously, that'll be a huge challenge. Right now, I'm just using metaphors, and that's great. I'm glad I learned how to use metaphors. But it'll still be really, really, really important that I can design year, a full year for the students to learn at every step. Um, and another thing that I really enjoyed about this semester was the reading of Born on a Blue Day. I thought that again that kind of goes back to how do people learn? Well, Daniel Tammet has an incredible mind. He has an incredibly sharp mind that just works a little bit differently. And even with that little bit of difference, he really struggled through school. Um, he excelled in some subjects and struggled in others, but he was still an incredibly smart individual. Yet, excuse me, some teachers would still kind of label him as, the odd one in the class. And obviously, too, I don't ever want to label any student anything because that just kind of puts him in a track and it can stick with him for a very long time. But with Daniel, I really loved reading the book because he surprised me so much in the second half of the book. So he ends up going to Lithuania for a few months to teach English, and in the chapter leading up to that move, I was afraid for him because he's in this turbulent time in his life. He's 17, going on 18. It's a really hectic time, anyways, regardless of what you're doing, let alone going to Lithuania from England. And I was really scared for him because he had really struggled with a lot of change, with leaving his routine. And what the heck is he going to do when he gets to another country without his support system? And I loved those chapters once he had gone to Lithuania. It seemed like it opened up a whole new world for him. And it totally caught me off guard. It totally surprised me to see this change that he had gone through, this growth that he went through while in Lithuania. Um, because he made some incredible friends. He built his own support system in that sense, and he like found a new passion, learning new languages and exploring the way languages are built. I know I had watched a TED talk on him because I was fascinated by this person, and in it he talks about how he's now learned five other languages besides Lithuanian and obviously English. And he purposely kind of chooses these harder, quote unquote, stranger languages because he likes to find the beauty in them. And I mean, that was just an incredible thing to see that this man who had been labeled as this kind of odd child, this who struggled in classes, to blossom into this incredibly talented, incredibly intelligent, well-spoken man, adult. And that is something that I'm really looking forward to being able to help um, while working in a school because obviously reading Born on a Blue Day, I'm just kind of the observer. I had nothing to do with it. But working in a classroom, you get to not only see the growth firsthand, observe it firsthand, but you get to help it. You get to help the student grow. And so, and even to, I'm kind of thinking of like Rousseau, where he's talking about kind of the natural school and letting the student study whatever they want and kind of grow naturally in that sense. And although he didn't like that only applied to men, but that's a whole other thing because that's, yeah. Um, Obviously, that doesn't apply to this part of the education system, but the nature part was a really incredible idea, um, just kind of this natural education. And I'm thinking, I wonder how that would have applied to Daniel if he would just been allowed to study the things that he wanted to study. Maybe he would have found a passion for language earlier in his life, and that would have made the Lithuania trip not nearly as daunting. Um, and so, but again, going back to the growth that, I personally have gone through growth. Obviously, I'm 26, going to be 27 soon, so I've gone through growth. But a lot of it was like personal. A lot of it was this, almost forcing myself to grow. And, I wonder what my eighth grade history teacher, one of my favorite teachers, what she would think now. Like, I wonder what happened to Sam. Um, I wonder, and so I'm looking forward to being able to take part in some of that growth. I had already gotten to see some and help firsthand when I worked in a preschool and being able to see the growth of, the children as they go from preschool to kindergarten. And even just for those, I got there in October and the year ended in May. And, if you kind of look at it day by day, it didn't, you don't see the growth on a day-to-day basis. But when you look at it over the course of the year, you just think, oh my gosh, they're almost unrecognizable. That if you compare them, put them side by side, yes, they look alike, but they don't act at all similar. And that was just so cool to be able to witness. And I'm so excited to be able to construct a classroom and build a classroom that will allow people of all learning styles, of all learning styles to express themselves, to find themselves, and to take in information in different ways, and then to see that growth from September to June, whatever the school year might be. Um, and so, thinking of some of the other books that we've read, I really enjoyed reading The Dream Keepers. I thought that that was a another really great book that showed that there isn't one solution for all of this. That because it examined the teaching styles of a number of different teachers who were teaching quote unquote like at-risk kids, students who lived in poor neighborhoods of rough quote unquote rough neighborhoods, and how did the teachers reach them? How did they connect with the students? And each teacher had a different style. I'm sure if you had asked ask the teachers, how do people learn? Each one of them would give you a different answer. Yes, they might have some similarities, but each of them would um, come to it in a different way because their answers are going to be different depending on their own students, right? Their own experiences and their own students' experiences. And so I really enjoyed reading that book. I thought it was almost kind of funny at first. Like I scoffed at it when I opened it up and saw that um, it had been written and like the information compiled in like the late 80s. And I thought, oh my gosh, how is this ever going to apply to me? It's 30 plus years later, almost, holy crap, almost 30 years later. And it it applied greatly because it shows that there's no one solution, that to a certain extent too you're going to make mistakes, which is always kind of comforting to read that, oh, even great teachers kind of screw up sometimes. Cool, that's good to know. um, and that you need to bring yourself into the classroom, that you need to bring your own personality and open up to the students, because how are they going to open up and connect with you if I'm just a brick wall? Um, And I really enjoyed that. I did have a quote here from the book because it talks about at the end they have a afterword where they talk about the next generation of dream keepers. And um, maybe I'll be in one of these books one day. No, I won't. But one of the teachers, his name was Scott Nash, and he was on track to become a lawyer. He didn't think that he would ever become a teacher until like his final semester of college. But on here's a quote. So he had also started his own honors program for underrepresented students of color at the school, and I thought that that was another just a really interesting thing that he had done. But on one occasion, Scott decided to take one of his 2 professional days in his own school building. Instead of attending a conference or workshop or visiting another school, Scott went into the main office, randomly selected a student's roster, and decided to follow it for the entire day. By the end of the day, he was so frustrated that he met with his colleagues and told them he could not believe how utterly boring the school day was for the students. How could teachers expect students to sit for 5 to 6 hours a day of mindless activity? That comes from page 174 of the Dream Keepers. And so I chose that quote because I find that almost kind of like a challenge for myself because when I think of going into a school and, affecting my own classroom and changing the culture of my classroom, I wonder about, well, what's the culture of the school though too? What's going on when these maybe my students aren't with me for the whole day, or maybe have one group of students every hour. What's going on when they're not in my classroom? And I thought it took a lot of guts for Scott to call out his own coworkers, despite maybe not being there for as long as them. Um, because that's scary. You don't know how they're going to respond. You don't know what they're going to say. Um, but also it's a challenge to myself. Would I be able to do that? Would I be able to challenge coworkers? How far can I change the culture? Am I going to just change my own classroom? Am I going to look to go further and really affect the whole school? And again, a part of the Dream Keepers too was the teachers injected themselves into the community. They were part of the entire, the world that the students lived in. And I think that's another key component of, um, working with youth, working with students, is that it goes beyond the 6 hours that you see them. Um, and so, well, I've been rambling for a little bit, and I hope this has been a cohesive talk about my experiences this semester. I've enjoyed this class, and I think that I've learned a lot. I mean, I know that that's very broad, but I really have. I've enjoyed reading just about everything, reading about cognitivism, humanism, Rousseau, Wollstonecraft, all of it. And I'm looking forward to the next, however many semesters I have. I'm looking forward to the next few years where I actually get to learn, where I get to learn more of this, where I get to learn more of how am I going to, build a culture in my classroom, learning more about how people learn, getting more into that, and how can I affect students' learning? How can I lay out that roadmap? How can I better effectively guide a student down the path? And how can I better connect with them? There are still so many questions that I have, and still so many that I haven't even found out yet. There's going to be a lot more questions that I'm going to get, and I'm sure I won't even find the answers for them. I'm sure that I'll be teaching for 20 years and be like, oh, that's how that's supposed to work. Um, but anyways, I hope you've enjoyed my reflection, my video. This was so much better for me than writing an essay. I will say this is just how I am as a person. How I learn is just through talking and through working out ideas verbally, because typing it is just, it's very tough. So thank you for watching my video, and yeah, looking forward to more learning.